Oh, yes, indeed, it will be epic. This, however, is Blue Please on WoW Radio with myself, Total Biscuit. Now, I have other things to say, and I certainly don't have a lot of time to say them, so I'm going to be getting on with it. Now, those of you interested in the contest, you've got to keep listening. You will hear the Olympic ring, which will be the first of 5 words. Once you put those 5 words together, you will have to email them to olympics@wcradio.com. That is olympics@wcradio.com. And don't be hasty. I would suggest that you wait for all 5 words, lest you look like a fool. But yeah, don't worry if you're kind of stressed out about it. I'll play it twice during the show. That's twice, yes, 2. Yes. And you are going to know what it is. I mean, it will be pretty obvious, and you'd have to be an absolute fool not to know. Now, I'm going to go a bit general for the next 15 minutes, and I'm going to put this idea out there for you. And the idea is this. Wrath of the Lich King is the same as the Burning Crusade. And is that a bad thing? That is a good question. And that is a question I'm going to attempt to answer in the next 15 or so minutes. So let's get right down to it. My experience of Wrath so far. Yes, the game itself is pretty much the same as you would expect it to be. You go through the Dark Portal. And by, of course, the Dark Portal, I mean you get on the boat and you go into Howling Fjord. Or you go into the Borean Tundra. Yes, there are, in fact, 2 starting zones which you can go into, which is kind of nifty. And, of course, the reason for that is, well, it's twofold. If you don't like one, you can go to the other, because I know loads of people hated Hellfire, and they don't have to worry about either getting overcrowded, although I can pretty much guarantee you that they will still get overcrowded. This will at least, however, try to alleviate some of the overcrowding. What I will say is that, good lord, please, 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 do not try and do the Zeppelin pirate bombing mission in the first few days. It will not happen. That Zeppelin's going to be full. It's a daily quest where you basically go around on the Zeppelin, and you have to drop bombs down from the Zeppelin, because of course you can't fly in Northrend as of yet. And you're competing with everyone else to do so. And let me tell you, it's hard enough to do it on your own with no one else there. With 200 people crammed on the Zeppelin trying to throw bombs at every pirate they see, good luck. That's all I can say with that. Ugh. It's going to be a nightmare. I'm going to be avoiding that like the plague. Now, you go into these areas, and what you see is pretty much what you would expect. It looks prettier, and it looks different. Now, it doesn't look as outlandishly different as the Outland. See what I did there? Dear. Objection! Yeah, I better not do that again. Now, it looks a lot more, I'd say realistic. Realistic is the wrong word. Because nothing in WoW looks realistic whatsoever, and indeed it shouldn't. What it does is it's very much more matte colours and pastel shades going on there. It looks a little bit more muted. If you were going to use the word realistic, that would probably be the best way to describe it. Obviously, again, it doesn't look realistic at all, but the pastels are more muted and the shades are more muted, and it's nowhere near as wacky, and it's got nowhere near as many crazy, bright, primary, garish colours that the Outlands had, indeed, at least in the first few zones. No, it's a lot more restrained in its colour palette, and that's not actually a bad thing, because it does look very, very, very good. I mean, I'm not kidding. You have no idea. If you've never played the beta and you've just looked at the screenshots and you haven't seen the game in motion, you really have no idea whatsoever as to how cool it is. Let me give you an example. They've increased the view distance a lot. And I'm not just talking like a few feet. I'm talking like 5-10 miles. Let me ask you to do one thing for me. Go into beta if you have access, and of course when you do get access, go and try this. Get on your mount, and I'm not talking about your flying mount, just your normal mount, and go to the top of a very big hill, and just look. Just look at the amount of detail, and look at the distance. Look at the amount of terrain there is there, and just look at how well made it is. And just marvel at it just for a moment, because you know what? I say a lot of very negative things on this show, and I won't apologise for any of them, because they're all true. Or at least true in my crazed adult mind. But I think there's something that we really do forget. And that's the magic of WoW. And how it made us feel when we first started playing it. How awe-inspired we were by the world. Why were we awe-inspired by it? I mean, it's nothing we hadn't seen before. It was just so well put together. And it looked so great. And there was all of these little details. And everything felt like it was supposed to be there. You felt a sense of belonging in a world that you just entered. And Blizzard is very good at that. And you know what? It continues into Wrath. And I'm hoping that you guys will get the same feeling that I got when I started playing beta. And that was that feeling, that lost magic feeling, that feeling of belonging that kind of got swept away with all of the raiding and the repeating of the level 70 content and all that kind of thing, after I'd seen everything and done everything, and then going into this new area where everything was just so well put together. It felt like it was supposed to be there, and it felt like you were supposed to be there, and that was great. And I really like that. I think, again, that's something we really do forget. So take some time to appreciate the little details. Now, talking about little details, let's talk about the way that quests work in Wrath. The answer is, of course, exactly the same, but there's a lot of variety there. Now, you know how questing works. And you know what quests are kind of interesting and stick in your mind as cool and not cool. And you know, hopefully, what you'd like to see in future quests. Now, they've introduced an awful lot of quests which involve doing things which are somewhat out of the ordinary. They have reduced the amount of kill this many quests and collect this many quests. What they've done is, the ones that they have in there, they've spiced up a little bit. For instance, I came upon a quest which is around level 70-71 quest, and it involves killing these proto-drakes, and there's a big storyline behind this, and you can go and investigate it, and you'll see if you're in Howling Fjord. The proto-drakes and the Viking-style proto-titan race that are inhabiting the area are very prevalent, and the storyline in that area is linked pretty much entirely to them. And they have these proto-drakes, and they're flying around this area which is pretty much on fire. And the fire looks great. I mean, you haven't seen these fire effects yet, unless you've been watching our videos, of course. The fire looks awesome. And you have to go into this area, you've got to kill the proto-drakes. Of course, you can't reach them, they're too high in the sky. So what happens is, the guy who gives you the quest also gives you this wand, yeah? And everyone's able to use this wand. It's this terrible little wand that does about 20 damage, but he says he's enhanced the range to about 100 yards. And it actually does damage as well. It's not just like, say, the lasso that you get in the quest you find in the Blade's Edge Mountains, where you've got to go and wrangle those netherrates. It's not just a token item like that. It actually does damage. It actually acts like a proper wand. And it has a huge range on it, so that allows you to bring the mobs down to you. And that, to me, is interesting, because it shows a little bit more thought being put into the quest. It's not a slapdash quest, they actually made it unique. And I will remember that quest for a long time, because it was unique. But that is not anywhere near as unique as some of the other quests that I found while I was wandering around in the Howling Fjord. There was a quest based around an area which is like a giant strip mine of sorts. It's a huge quarry-like area. And it's filled with dwarves from the Explorers League and gargoyles which are attacking the dwarves. Now, there is a daily quest there, there's in fact several quests, and you are allowed to ride in a dwarven flying machine. And it's not just a flying mount. This thing handles entirely differently. It appears to be an example of what they're going to be doing with the siege engines later on, which of course haven't yet been implemented. The mechanics and the movement of the flying machine is entirely different to anything you've seen before. It's not like a flying mount where you have complete freedom of movement. This thing handles, yeah? It has a particular curve to it when you're trying to turn. Its turning circle is nowhere near as tight as a flying mount. And it has momentum, which is unheard of. I mean, you can just stop your mount at any time. This you can't. This is a flying machine. It's like a prop plane. So this thing has momentum. You can't stop it. You've got to just keep going with it, and you've got to swing it round, and the way that you pilot is very intriguing. Now, the first quest involves grabbing these bags of ore or gold or whatever, and you drag them up and you put them in this hopper, and you think, okay, that's okay. And you get the next quest, it's like, right, now we've armed it with machine guns and rocket launchers. Go and kill some gargoyles for us. And that's a daily quest. And you get rep for it and everything. Now, to me, that shows an awful lot more effort. Massive amount of effort being put into quest design to create something which is unique and interesting. Because, if anything, I think that's something that the TBC really had a problem with, and I don't think daily quests really fixed it either. They introduced the idea of bombing runs and then overused the idea of bombing runs. Like, how many bloody bombing runs do you want me to go on? This was interesting the first few times, but not so much anymore. And they seem to have taken the design philosophy that, yeah, questing can be inherently boring, but questing is a necessary evil because it's a lot less boring than grinding. Therefore, what we need to do is to capitalise on what made the game so successful to begin with, and that was the lack of grind. And yes, 1 to 60 there was no grind. And you guys that think there was, no, you did that by yourself. There were never a shortage of quests at any point up to level 60. I will say that hand on my heart. There were some areas that were a little bit sparse, but you could always quest. I quested all the way to 60. I did not grind at all. And that was a long time ago. I played from EU launch, and I was 60 a few months after that. So, don't tell me that it was patch content, because it wasn't. Oh, if you read any of the reviews, you will see that questing was one of the big selling points of the game. A lot of people liked the questing, and pretty much universal acclaim for the quest system, saying, hey, this game has managed to take the grinding out of MMORPGs. It's managed to take the grinding out of MMORPGs. Wrath. What was that? Wrath. I have no idea where that came from. It sounds like a ring. Wrath. Wrath, you say? How mysterious. I wonder what it could mean. I think you guys will have to figure that one out. Anyway. The selling point of WoW, one of the big selling points, at least in the reviews, was the questing system, and they are capitalizing on it to make sure that it's going to be a long haul. I mean, I've been experiencing that, and it's taken quite a while. I've done a few instances, I've done a lot of quests, and it took me quite a while to get to 71. I'm sure that you guys could easily do it in a day if you hammered through the content, and no doubt I will probably do the same thing. But it's going to be a long haul to 80, and it's going to take you longer than it did to get to 70 in Burning Crusade. Now, what I would suggest is that you savour it. Savour it as much as you can, because the quests, at least from what I've seen so far, are very enjoyable. Very enjoyable indeed. As to whether or not there's anything different there, well, you can add as much variety as you like, and people will still say, well, it's the same old questing. And I don't think you're going to be able to escape that. And indeed, I would suggest that you don't want to escape it. Seriously, I would like you to think about the alternative. Think about pretty much any other MMO that's had issues with XPing and leveling up, and the grind associated with it. I used to play MUDs, and all you got to do in those was grind, and it took longer than it did in WoW to gain a level. And there were 100 levels in the MUD that I used to play, and I played it for like 5 years, and I didn't get to level 25. Oh, and you lost levels if you died. Think about the alternative. I think that WoW players really are quite spoiled at the moment. They really have no idea how it used to be, how things used to be. I sound like a bit of an old man there. It's kind of sad, but I really don't think that a lot of you realise just how easy you've got it. And I would suggest that you really do try and enjoy Wrath of the Lich King and the quests that are involved in it. Because as cynical as I am, I found myself smiling and saying, ZOMG, this is awesome, at a myriad of different things. And they were mostly associated with quests. Now, as regards to the instances, again, you can expect the same kind of thing. You can see our Wrath of the Lich King instance videos. We did 2 commentated videos for the first 2 instances. We plan on doing a few more later on. Utgard Keep and the Nexus, that's what we've got up there. Check out WCRadio.com or have a look on Warcraft movies, they have them. You can also have a look on Filefront, search for WoW Radio, and you'll find our videos there. Some well-commented runs there, and you will see that the instances are pretty similar to what you can expect. Utgard is a straight linear run. There is one gimmick in Utgard, and that involves the first forge room, whereby the entire room lights up in flames. And yes, you will say, OMG, this is awesome. I can pretty much guarantee that. You're not going to ignore it. And what happens is you have to kill forge masters, which unlock the various flame walls. So it's basically just a blockage system. It's nothing special, but it looks cool. Now, the Nexus is a non-linear instance with areas which just seem to be pointless and exist only for the purpose of giving you something to look at and things to kill. Now, again, not necessarily a bad thing. Learning the navigation is something of a lost art, in my opinion. Instances have been very linear of late, particularly stuff that isn't raid content. And indeed, even raid content has been quite linear in the way that you advance. Their definition of non-linear was, well, Black Temple, so they called it. They called it a non-linear raid experience, and it wasn't by any stretch of the imagination. There was an order of things you had to do it in. Now, as regards to the Nexus, there isn't really a particular special order that you have to do anything in. The first boss is actually the last boss, and you can't access him until you killed all the other bosses, because he's frozen in carbonite. Yes, Tutamishka solo. He's actually frozen, and you have to unlock him by clicking these different orbs. Again, nothing really new there. But I think the question you've got to ask is just how new do you want it? Can you reinvent the wheel? Because, as far as I'm concerned, that is not what WoW did in the first place. It didn't reinvent the wheel at all. It greased it a lot, it shined it, it gave it big, huge, stonking spinners. But it didn't reinvent it. Pretty much what it did was what everyone else had done, just better. And that's what I'd like to see continued, and as far as I'm concerned, that's what you're going to get in Wrath. Listen to Blue Please, with myself, Total Biscuit. This is WoW Radio. I'll be back after the break with my soapbox and my grand idea. I'm going to play you some Nubcake news. I'll be right back after this. Enjoy. Live from the Blue Please Tower in Howling Fjord, it's Nubcake News with award-winning anchor Total Biscuit, bringing you all the news that matters, whether you realize it or not. Good evening, I'm Total Biscuit, and here is your Nubcake News. Ever since the launch of the Burning Crusade, raiders have turned their backs on the fiery depths of Molten Core, the deadly spire of Blackwing Lair, the gates and Temple of Anchorage, which were in dire need of an exterminator, and the awe-inspiring necropolis Naxxramas, which players accurately described as a little chilly. With all eyes fixed on the terrors awaiting players in the dungeons of the Outlands, it's been difficult to say what exactly these old adversaries have been up to. The Azerothian neoconservative community is quoted as saying, "These extremists are a dire threat to our great civilization and must be wiped out for good." This seemed like a great idea, and our news team gathered swords, axes, and what appeared to be some kind of inflatable dinghy, and were all set to go when we were confronted by a spokesman from Liberals of Warcraft, a new community concern group who we are reliably informed is filled with communists and pinkos, perhaps communist pinkos. The spokesman is quoted as saying, "Or, leave them alone." With such compelling testimony, our news team laid down their arms and went back to doing what they do best, playing DS and drawing penises in PictoChat. This reporter, however, will not be stopped by any low-down dirty liberals, and determined to narrate himself in the third person, set off himself to find out what's been going on. After many days of dangerous trekking that could have all been avoided if he'd just rolled a mage, he arrived at the Molten Core, where we now bring our correspondent Total Biscuit live on the scene. Total Biscuit? Yes, thank you, Total Biscuit. I'm standing here now in the middle of Molten Core, and while it's still as pleasantly warm as ever, the entire place appears to be deserted. So you can confirm that you are not in fact being eaten by a core hound at this very moment. Yes, Total Biscuit, I can in fact confirm that. The eating, the gnawing, the screaming, and the horrible fiery death is conspicuous by its absence. Thank you, Total Biscuit. We go now to Senior Wildlife Specialist Total Biscuit, who's been poking around in the Temple of Anchorage. Yes, thank you, Total Biscuit. I would ask you to keep your voice down, but see, there's absolutely nothing here. Our investigation reveals that the temple appears to have been fumigated. There are no traces of life, indeed. All we found was this note on the fridge. They had a fridge? I am reliably informed that they kept Viscidius there in a jello mold. Wait, didn't raiders actually kill Viscidius? How could he have been in the fridge the entire time? No, Total Biscuit, no. Nobody ever killed Viscidius. That's why you didn't get your silithid femur. Would you stop reminding me of that? Why do you sound like me, anyway? Budget cuts. We couldn't afford a second reporter for this farcical feature. We're still busy trying to repair the fourth wall. Total Biscuit, what does the note actually say? It seems to say, lost our jobs, couldn't pay the rent, got evicted, out looking for work. P.S. We hate you all. Thank you, Total Biscuit. That was most illuminating. Onward we went, venturing to our final destination, Naxxramas, where we discovered a most peculiar sight. Reporting live from the scene, it's Robert Horton. Just kidding, it's Total Biscuit. Total Biscuit, what we have here is the site of the Naxxramas Unemployment Agency, whose slogan appears to be, "We'll get you back on your feet," or wings, or tentacles, or big swirling fiery thing. What the hell is that anyway? A vortex. I guess it's a vortex. Could be a cloud. No, definitely a vortex. Concise and to the point. Have you been able to see what's inside yet? Not only that, but I've been able to interview several of the applicants. Well, how did you manage that? Isn't this live? You only just got there. Total Biscuit, please. Do you really think we have the budget for live? Everything's pre-recorded these days. Even you. But, how could that be? Total Biscuit, please. I don't expect you to understand. You're just an idiot. Just trust me on this one and roll the tape. I'm here at the Naxxramas Unemployment Agency, where it appears there's a huge line of legacy raid bosses. Oddly enough, I can also see a few encounters from the Burning Crusade here, maybe trying to get a head start on finding new work. The applicants appear to be filling out forms and answering questions for the employees. Let's see what's going on. Name?
Your heart will explode.
Mr. Explode, do you have any experience in the areas of heavy lifting, plumbing, or agricultural research?
Your friends will abandon you.
Ah, social worker. Great. Fill out I-376-B and file it in the blue box. Next. Name. Oh, for God's sake. Security, get this firelord out of here. He's melting the necropolis. Eventually, we managed to find the manager of this busy establishment, Mr. Kelthazad, who we are reliably informed likes to be called Kevin around the workplace. We sat down with him for a chat about the purpose of his business.
Well, you see, Naxxramas used to be the talk of the town. Everyone would come here to try their luck. The place was jumping. The undead were feasting happily on the flesh of the innocent. Everything was great. That is until they opened that damn portal. Suddenly, there's nobody to be seen. Nobody's trying to steal my epics, kill my minions. Hell, even Mr. Bigglesworth's feeling safe again, and let me tell you, that cat needs discipline. Sure, I hate it when he dies, but if he doesn't, he chews on the damn carpet. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to get a repair guy up here? They keep demanding hazard pay. Ridiculous. The only person I've seen past year was my grandmother. She knitted me this cardigan. Said it was a bit chilly up here. I like this cardigan. Do you like this cardigan?
Looks a bit garish to me.
I said, do you like this cardigan?
Best cardigan I've ever seen. That woman is a goddess.
She's dead.
Oh.
Hasn't stopped her from knitting, though. No, you never could keep the old girl down, even with arthritis.
So, Kevin, let me ask you a question. Where exactly are all these old bosses working?
Well, we here at Naxxramas believe in sharing the wealth and the plague, so they've all come to work for me. We're getting a second chance thanks to Lich King, splendid old chap, so we think they should too.
For you? Wait a second, how many bosses does Naxxramas have now?
73. Well, 74 if we can get Viscidus out of the fridge. They just seem so happy in there.
Do you think any of them are holding a grudge? I mean, I used to be a raider.
Why don't you ask Patchwork? He's standing right behind you.
So, as you can see, a community-conscious raid dungeon for the new expansion. We hope there's a long reset timer. This has been Nubcake News. Good night.